So, hello everyone. Hola a todos, bienvenidos and welcome, and thank you for joining us in this second edition of the CENIEH Distinguished Annual Lecture. This year, we celebrate this event within the frame of the Week of Science. The CENIEH Distinguished Annual Lecture is a very special event for our research center because it's really in the heart of our vocation for social compromise. And it is the opportunity to bring to the society the most renowned scientists in the field, in the world, and those whose work is really having a tremendous impact in the broad field of human evolution research. And this is the case, no doubt, of Professor Nicole Guavan, director at the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Jena, Germany, who has honored us by accepting the invitation to become this year's CENIEH Distinguished Lecturer. Professor Boivin, dear Nikki, if I may, she's an inspiring scientist with a significantly broad and cross-disciplinary vision on the evolution of humankind that is relevant not only for those interested in the study of the past, but for the whole society, as she is addressing humans and the biological, cultural, and ecological processes that have shaped our relationship with the planet. As such, her research on the human niche has an impact not only in the reconstruction of human history, but also in many relevant topics for our society, such as Anthropocene, migration, climate change, and globalization, as among many others. Especially in the times we are going through, her research is an example of how past can shed light to present and future, and how bringing together natural sciences and humanities, it is not only possible, but necessary. So thank you so much, Nikki, for accepting our invitation. And we really look forward to listening to your conferences about the archaeology of human Earth and the transformation of Earth by humans. Thank you. This is your time. As I tell everybody who is following us through the YouTube channel, you can you can answer questions to Professor Guavan at the end. Just have to write your questions in the chat, live chat that is in the YouTube channel. And okay, we are really looking forward to listen to you. Welcome to this series, and this is your time.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, we do. Everything fine.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you. So very big thank you to Maria and to CENIEH for the opportunity to give this talk. It really is an honor for me to be part of this celebration of your fantastic institute. And I think the only regret that I have is that I can't be there in person to have the opportunity to celebrate with all of you in person. But it is fantastic that despite us being in the middle of a global pandemic and all of these restrictions on movement, we can nonetheless come together digitally like this. So today I'm going to be talking about the archaeology of our planet's transformation by humans. And I think we can probably all agree that the human alteration of the Earth and its climate is really one of the defining, or is the defining issue of our time, rather. And this is reflected in the increasing use of this term Anthropocene across a range of different disciplines and in the popular media. And the term is recognizing that we have potentially moved into a new geological epoch in which humans have come to dominate entirely Earth systems. And it is in recognition of the profound influence that humans are having on the planet. It is in recognition of this that so many researchers across so many disciplines and people in the public sphere and in the political sphere are mobilizing efforts and coming together to try and address the challenges that we find ourselves facing in the Anthropocene. And of course, amongst this group are an increasing number of archaeologists. But I think there's still a tendency in our field and also outside of our field to think that actually archaeology doesn't really have that much to contribute in terms of addressing these significant issues that we face. And in my talk, I want to not only review how we have transformed the Earth, but also suggest that, in fact, our discipline can and should try to address, to contribute to addressing these challenges. So today in my talk, I want to do three things. I want to firstly say a little bit about what it is that makes us as a species such an effective Earth transformer. And then I want to look at how archaeology is helping us to understand the much deeper time transformation of our Earth. And here I'll draw a little bit on some of the work we're doing in our department. And then I want to, at the end, explore, as I've indicated, this issue of how we can learn from the past to actually shape a better Anthropocene moving forward into the future. So firstly, what is it that makes us such an effective Earth transformer? Well, certainly a part of this story is that humans are everywhere. So wherever you go on the planet, no matter how remote, you will encounter other humans, or at least evidence of human presence or human activities. And this is something we take for granted. It doesn't surprise us. But in fact, it should, because this distribution of our species all around the world, which is known as a cosmopolitan species distribution, is actually is actually very rare amongst species our size, and in fact is really only common in very small species of the kind of microorganism scale. In fact, most species on the planet have a circumscribed distribution, at least those that are on the kind of larger end, and they are found only on one continent or one region of one continent, or in some cases only on a single island. And that is why when European natural historians and explorers traveled around the world, in particular in the 18th and 19th centuries, documenting plants and animals in different parts of the world, they encountered such an extraordinary and diverse array of new species, which they cataloged and documented and described, and also brought samples of back to Europe, which of course fill our natural history museums today. But wherever people went, wherever Europeans went around the world from the age of discovery onwards, they encountered other humans. And while they may not have recognized these humans as part of the same species as themselves, we today, of course, certainly do recognize that all humans on all continents, all environments, all climates across the world are part of one single species, which is Homo sapiens. So how did we come to have this extraordinary and unique global distribution? Why are we so different, for example, from birds? Birds are also found all across the world in an extraordinary array of different climates and environments and niches. But in contrast to us, birds are not a single species. There are many, many thousands of bird species all around the world, and each of them has evolved through time to be adapted to a particular niche through the biological evolution of these individual species, which has shaped their biology and their behavior to particular niches. So birds have adapted biologically to a wide variety of different niches. Humans, on the other hand, have adapted to an extraordinary array of different niches all around the world through a very different mechanism, and that is the mechanism of culture. So rather than adapting to the world, humans have, in many respects, adapted the world to themselves through processes of cultural niche construction. And so it is this combination of being found everywhere and having culture that is cumulative, culture that ratchets up through time, culture that becomes increasingly complex. It is through the combination of these things, as well as, of course, our language and our ability to cooperate, our sociality, that we have come to be such, have such an extraordinary capacity for niche construction, and have come to be such powerful agents of planetary change. And so we can, if we look back in the archaeological record, we can see, the evidence of our use of culture to occupy an increasingly broad array of different niches. And we see this going way back, really to the origins of our genus Homo. And if we look, for example, at the site of Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, where we have a really fantastic collaboration with Julio Mercader and his team, what we see is that some of the earliest stone tool technologies and this very early culture is being used to adapt, for early humans to adapt to an increasingly diverse array of different habitats. So we see a lot of climate change, we see volcanic activity, and new environments constantly emerging, and humans, just coming back onto these landscapes again and again, no matter how they change. So we're already, by this point in time, exhibiting, quite significant levels of adaptability and flexibility. And these just really increase through time. And by the time we get to Homo sapiens and the late Pleistocene, we have a species that is creating quite complex material culture and using this to disperse quite rapidly around the world, and to move into a number of new habitats that we really haven't occupied, at least in any particularly intensive way before. And this is, and these are habitats, for example, like tropical forests, which the work of Patrick Roberts in particular has highlighted our adaptation to in this time period. And then, of course, in the Holocene, we expand even further into some really very challenging kinds of environments to which we are extremely poorly suited biologically, but we really push out as a species into a whole variety of new habitats and begin to inhabit these quite intensively. And we do this through the mechanism of culture, through niche construction, and of course, things like agriculture, the secondary products of animals, technology and transport. All of these things are very important to allowing us to adapt to such a broad array of different environments. And we've been very interested in our department in looking at some of these very strange human adaptations, like drinking the milk of other animals, riding other animals, and the key role that these have played in allowing us to expand across and inhabit new landscapes during the Holocene. And so as we move around the planet and we are adapting to an increasingly wide array of different niches, because we have this powerful culture, and because we are able to engage in niche construction to shape these very diverse niches to our needs, of course, this means that we start to increasingly also have impacts on the environments that we're living in, to reshape them in various ways, and to gradually become more and more effective niche constructors. And there's a lot of discussion and debate about just how early in time we can trace back the roots of the Anthropocene, but it certainly seems to be the case that by about 50,000 years ago in the late Pleistocene, we're starting to see some pretty good evidence that humans are pretty significantly shaping their world. And we see evidence for forest management and forest shaping. We see evidence for the alteration of fire regimes. We see evidence for the first translocations, probably deliberate, of certain species. And then we see evidence that humans are starting to shape patterns of extinction and extirpation. And it's probably a set of major extinctions that happen in the late Quaternary of megafauna that are one of our significant late Pleistocene human impacts. And of course, these have these extinctions, which are very, very substantial, and in some places lead to the loss of more than 3/4 of the genera of megafauna. It's long been very contentious what caused these megafaunal extinctions, but there's an increasing consensus that humans had at least some role to play in the late Quaternary megafaunal extinctions, and probably a fairly significant role in parts of the world where humans and megafauna had less of an opportunity to co-evolve. So we are very interested in our department in these megafaunal extinctions, and we have several PhD students who are drawing on new archaeological science methods to study them. But we're also, like many others, really fascinated by the increasing evidence that not only did all of these megafauna go extinct, but this had really significant kind of knock-on effects on ecosystems, on vegetation, on geochemical cycling, on the atmosphere. And so it's looking like, already by the late Pleistocene, humans are having some pretty significant impacts on Earth systems globally. And of course, in the Holocene, we see an intensification of these kinds of impacts. And this comes in particular as we enter into a new set of relationships with a variety of different plants and animals. And we, as we enter into these new relationships, we start to shape the evolution of these species, to shape their morphology, their biology, their behavior in pretty significant ways. And we also start to promote these species and promote them on the landscape, to cultivate and manage them. And this leads to their increase in terms of their population size, as well as their significant expansion beyond the natural range of their original progenitor species. So we promote all of these species, and this has major implications through time for our world. And we've been very interested in our department in tracking the spread of many of these species, both as farmers move around the world, so as farming populations expand and bring a variety of plants and animals with them, but also as we start to see the long distance trade and exchange and transport and communication intensify over the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, and particularly the last 2,000 years, we start to see all of this long distance movement of people associated with an extraordinary level of biological exchange. So species are really being moved all around between different continents and promoted, and their populations are growing in the regions where they're being brought to. And this is a fascinating process of Earth transformation. And of course, as we promote these particular species and create the conditions for them to thrive, we also naturally have a whole range of impacts on other species and on ecosystems. And one very common impact that we have is in shaping and driving species extirpations. So we see this all over the world. And just as one example, Annika Janssen in our department has, and she's now in a new position elsewhere, but she has been studying the extirpation of wildebeest in Eastern Africa in association with the spread of pastoralists and their animals into East Africa. We also see significant extinctions on islands as humans move on to a host of thousands of new islands over the course of the Holocene, and they bring a variety of species with them. Islands, being rather fragile ecosystems, see very high levels of extinction, and this is something that we've been studying in different parts of the world. We also see, in association with these new arrivals and with these extinctions, real changes in the nutrient flow patterns in some of these island ecosystems. And then there are other impacts within forests. We see people start to shape and really alter forests and promote forest species that are more useful to them. So these are not domesticates as we kind of think of them, at least, but there are species that are being altered in a whole variety of ways by people who are living in or near forests. We're also seeing other types of impacts to forests, including deforestation, as agriculture moves out and people look for more and more land on which to grow crops and keep animals. And we see significant patterns of deforestation, particularly as agriculture intensifies and as we move into time periods where there is production, agricultural production for broader economic trading systems. And so really all of this culminates in some pretty extensive patterns of human alteration of the planet. And we've been part of a study called the Archaeoglobe Project, which was spearheaded by Earl Ellis and brought together hundreds of archaeologists from around the world, and which looked at how humans have been shaping land cover over time in different parts of the world. And when we pull together all of this archaeological data that's accumulated over the last decades, what we can see is that particularly from about 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, we see pretty significant levels of human activity with implications for land cover, for ecosystems, but also that this human shaping of environments stretches back right to the beginning of the Holocene. And so we now host the Archaeoglobe Project in our institute, and we have a number of kind of spin-off projects now, including this one on island extinctions, which is being spearheaded by Andrea Kay, but involves project partners from all around the world. And once again, the aim is to pull together lots of data that different research groups have accumulated to build a picture to understand how island ecosystems have been shaped by humans over the long term. And so we're looking at the introduction of new species to islands, and we're looking at patterns of extirpation and extinction. And this is just one of a number of different projects that are trying to look at bringing together existing data sets to build up a picture of how humans have transformed the planet in different regions of the world over the long term. And this is very possible now because we've built up all of these data sets around the world. And so through all of these changes, we reach the point that we are at today, where humans now appropriate a significant proportion of net primary productivity, so the products of photosynthesis on our planet, and where we and our domesticated species have come to entirely dominate terrestrial mammalian biomass. And the picture that we see now hasn't come about all of a sudden. It's the outcome of these long-term processes that stretch deep back into the Holocene. And so what we can see is that landscapes across the world have been significantly impacted by humans. And wherever you go, if you look at a landscape, it's almost certainly being impacted by people, and probably was impacted by people before the era of European colonization. And it's likely that there are layers upon layers even of human activity that are evidenced in different landscapes. So we really suspect that there are few, if any, pristine landscapes remaining on the planet, and there probably haven't been for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And this is a key story now to come out of all of this accumulated data that archaeologists have been gathering through detailed research and application of archaeological science techniques in different parts of the world. It's a key story that's emerging, and it's a fascinating and surprising and important story with major implications. At the same time, I think it's a story that that leaves me feeling a little bit concerned, and there are a number of reasons for this. For one, when I talk about this kind of research with people who aren't in the discipline of archaeology, just general members of the public or journalists and this kind of thing, I sometimes, or not so, rather too often, kind of get the response, well, if humans have been altering in landscapes and environments for such a long period of time, perhaps that's fundamental to who and what we are as a species, and we can't change. That's just how we are, and there's no hope for us. And that's one response. Another response is, well, if we've altered environments so much over the long term, what does it really matter if we alter them now further moving forward? Why do we need to preserve these environments if they're not even pristine, if they've already been transformed by people? And I think, of course, as archaeologists, we can recognize the problems with these kinds of arguments, and we can recognize the importance of differentiating between past levels of environmental transformation and what we see today. But at the same time, I think by continually promoting this message, we are perhaps not achieving exactly the kinds of ends that we hope to achieve. So I think we, as a discipline, need to think about the messages that we're getting across very carefully. But beyond this, I also think that there is just so much more that the past can actually tell us. And so I find that when people are thinking about how do we address the challenges of the Anthropocene, there's a really strong tendency to focus on the new, looking for new approaches, new ideas, new technologies, high tech, futuristic. And so there's a strong focus on the new. But in fact, and so I think we tend to underplay the fact that our species has been on the planet for thousands of years, and we have accumulated a vast repertoire of cultural knowledge that also has something to contribute as we move forward into, as we seek to address the challenges of the Anthropocene. And I think that obviously one way we can access all of this data about our past and about what's worked and hasn't worked, and long-term experiments and certain types of habitation or certain ways of living. Obviously, a key tool to accessing all of this is modern archaeological research, which offers a very systematic way to understand, to study, and to learn from our past in order to address the challenges of the future, of today and of the future. And we can do this now because we're a new kind of discipline. We've moved well beyond our antiquarian beginnings, and we have emerged as this science that is gathering all sorts of extremely useful data as we move forward into kind of uncharted territory on our planet. And so I want to mention a paper that Ali Crowther and I have coming out very soon in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution. It's a review paper in which we really try to look at how we can draw on the past, not only to look at these really significant changes that humans have made to the planet over the long term, but also how we can leverage the past in a variety of ways to try and shape a better Anthropocene. And there are a really extraordinary array of different case studies out there from archaeology and from related disciplines where people are trying and succeeding to various degrees to do exactly this kind of research, to use the data that we have from the past, the knowledge we acquire from the past, to do things like enrich biodiversity, support conservation, improve soil sustainability, enhance food security. And from my point of view, this is the way forward for our discipline. This is the kind of next generation of Anthropocene-related science within archaeology. And so within our department, we're starting to move in this direction. And we have a number of, I think, really interesting projects that are trying to step beyond just looking at how we have transformed the Earth to how can we use archaeological data to address some of these challenges we face. And I'll just give a few examples. This is ongoing work, but one is on the left, reflecting Patrick Roberts. He has a number of really fascinating projects on tropical forests where he and his team are not only looking at how we have transformed these ecosystems through time, but also how we can draw on this knowledge in order to better conserve these extraordinary and important ecosystems moving into the future. Secondly, we also have a PhD student, Victor Imanjeely, who comes to us from Kenya, and he's very interested in how we can draw on archaeological data, and very inspired by Amanda Logan's work to examine what we can learn about food security in Africa in the past, and how we can draw on this knowledge in order to potentially improve and enhance food security in his native country and in the rest of Africa moving into the future. And then we also have, as I've mentioned, the Island Extinctions Project, which Andrea Kay is leading. And this project, again, is not only interested in looking at how we have shaped island ecosystems over the long term, but also how we draw on archaeological data now in order to better conserve island ecosystems moving into the future, how we can, for example, identify the species that are at high, or taxa that are at higher risk of extinction based on what we learn from the archaeological record. So all of these projects are trying to explore how we can more effectively draw on the past to do more than tell a story about how humans have transformed the planet. We also have other studies that are looking at the sustainability and the more, say, positive role of different kinds of human activities. For example, the work of Corentin Bocaton in the Caribbean. He's been looking at snakes and lizards and showing that prior to European colonization, Amerindian populations actually seem to live in a very sustainable way with at least these kinds of species. And we only see their biodiversity really plummet after European colonization. So there's something about the way that people, at least initially, are living on these islands that's very much more sustainable than what happens when Europeans arrive. We also have interesting work being done by researchers like Steve Goldstein and Michael Storazem, who have been working with colleagues in order to understand how the spread of pastoralism in Eastern Africa not only altered grassland environments, but also potentially promoted and enriched those environments and created hotspots that were very supportive of wild megafaunal species and other species across these habitats. So these are just a few examples, and also climate change is a big topic of interest within our department, and we're looking at this in a number of different parts of the world, and of course trying to understand how climate change has through time shaped patterns of human dispersal and patterns of human occupation, but also increasingly trying to understand how we can draw on this past data in order to inform, better understand and predict the impact of climate change moving into the future. And this is something that's being done, for example, in the Arabian Peninsula, which is a region where humans have lived for a long period of time, but it's also very vulnerable to climate change. And the research that has been done to date suggests that some of the mechanisms that were available for people in the past to live through periods of severe climate change are no longer accessible potentially to people in future. So we really need to understand, what we can learn from these past data sets and how they can guide us moving forward. And that's a growing interest as well in the department. So that's some of the research going on in our department. But I wanted to just mention a few really nice case studies that Ali and I address in our paper, case studies that come from, in all cases, a lot of research over a long period of time by a multitude of different groups. And one is the example of terra preta. I think by now we all are pretty familiar with the story, the extraordinary story of the Amazon, which when I was growing up was seen as a really pristine landscape untouched by humans. Of course, we now know that in the past, the Amazon was home to agricultural populations, and these populations were able to live in the rainforest by altering the soils that they found there, which were not particularly conducive to agriculture, through the input of substantial amounts of different types of organic matter. And they created through time these very rich soils in the Amazon. But after 1492, when due to disease and genocide populations collapsed, these sites were abandoned, this technology was forgotten, and it's primarily through the mechanism of archaeology, through the discoveries of archaeologists and archaeologists then working with researchers in a variety of different fields, that this technology has been resuscitated and is now being used. It's called biochar technology, and it's being used to promote agricultural productivity and to also sequester carbon in a variety now of different parts of the world. Another way we can draw on the past is through something called Landusk Capital, and this is some of the kind of ancient infrastructure that that in different parts of the world, societies invested substantial amounts of labor and resources and energy into creating. So this is like terrace systems and irrigation systems and water management systems. And often because of political upheaval or other factors, these systems fell into disrepair. And archaeologists are involved in different parts of the world in trying to resuscitate, with varying degrees of success, some of these ancient systems. And this has happened rather successfully in the Middle East, where ancient Khanate systems for providing water have, in some parts of the region, recently been resuscitated because they are more suitable to the populations in the region. They're kind of low tech and relatively green technologies that don't rely on a lot of outside expertise in order to run. And so there's some interesting examples out there of this kind of application. And then finally, another really interesting example is fire management. Of course, this year we've seen some really horrendous, destructive fires in different parts of the world, in California and Australia. And what we are increasingly recognizing with these fires is that not only is climate change relevant and a key factor in promoting these fires, but also the practices of modern fire management are actually rather problematic. And so people are looking back to earlier forms of fire management, to indigenous approaches to fire management that undertook regular small-scale firing of the landscape in order to avoid these large-scale destructive fires. And today, in different parts of the world, people are drawing on these ancient ideas and ancient approaches in order to improve land management into the future. So we have some really interesting examples out there of how we can mobilize the past towards addressing the challenges that we face moving into the Anthropocene. And there are a whole host of ways that we can draw on data about the past in order to do some really interesting things to address these significant challenges that we face. And they're not only things like drawing on ancient infrastructure or ancient technologies, or looking at the past as baseline data or long-term experiments, but also equally important is understanding the social and political and cultural factors that also shape the resilience of societies. Issues like governance and social inequality and the degree of flexibility of different systems, all of these are things that archaeologists can also shed light on, and that help us to see that our problem, that our challenges are not only technological, but also social as we move forward. Okay, so I guess in conclusion, I would like to emphasize, as I have before, that we are not the first species to shape the Earth on a planetary scale, lest we get too big for our boots. If we look back 2.5 million years ago, we can see that lowly cyanobacteria also fundamentally reshaped the planet as they started to photosynthesize and to convert sunlight into energy. And one of the byproducts of this was oxygen. And as they did this through time, oxygen accumulated on our planet, accumulated in the atmosphere, and created the oxygenated planet that, of course, we live on today, which seems fantastic, and it is for us. But it wasn't for the many, many species that went extinct as a result, because for them, oxygen was poison. So this great oxygenation event is also known as the Great Oxygenation Apocalypse, because it led to the first mass extinction event on our planet. And it also plunged our planet into a severe and long-lasting glaciation, which has led to the planet at this point in time being called Snowball Earth. So we're not the first species by any means to have a significant impact in reshaping planet Earth, but we are certainly the first species to be conscious about what we are doing, to have awareness of what we are doing, and to be able to change the course of history and change, not only change the planet, but also, as I say, change the course of history. So we have the ability to make decisions about how are we going to address these challenges? Are we going to plunge our planet into a new climatic state? Are we going to drive thousands of species to extinction? Or do we want to enter into a phase of responsible stewardship of our planet? And this is what our species is capable of. And this is the challenge, of course, today, is to encourage ourselves as a species to do this and not to act more like cyanobacteria, just moving forward unthinkingly and plunging our planet into a totally different state. So just to conclude, I think that we are also a storytelling species. There's some fascinating anthropology about storytelling around fires and the importance of storytelling in human evolution as a mechanism through which we acquire and process all of this data about our experience, about our past, and we pass this on to future generations as knowledge that they can use moving forward to address the challenges that they face. And I see archaeology as this kind of storytelling, part of the storytelling tradition, part of processing the knowledge that we have, the information that we have about our past in order to move forward constructively into the future. And I hope that archaeologists will recognize the importance of their discipline, the capabilities that we have within our discipline to really contribute in significant ways to shaping a better Anthropocene moving into the future. So that is all, and I just want to end by acknowledging the contributions of so many people to the research that I've discussed. In particular, my dear friends and husband and key collaborators who I've worked with for many years, Michael Petralia, Patrick Roberts, and Ali Crowther, and also the many researchers, both past and present, and PhD students in the Department of Archaeology in our institute. I've talked a lot about research coming out of the department, as well as research that involves really significant and important project partners around the world, including, of course, CENIEH. And I would also finally like to thank and acknowledge the Max Planck Society for funding all of this science that we get to do here in Jena. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nikki. This was a wonderful, wonderful and beautifully presented conference. And I think it was the perfect time and the perfect context to speak about something that is really concerning all of us. We are going to start now a term of questions. So there are some people I already see a few questions, but while they connect and they put together our screens and we both appear together, I don't know, I just want to express, you make me think a lot. I think it is, I must say that I was surprised by something very simple, but it's this idea of talking of a better Anthropocene, just the simple idea of thinking that there is an alternative and a positive way of looking to our strong transformation power. No, I never thought that Anthropocene or people or general public indeed does not have this concept, that you can think of a good Anthropocene. So I think it's very enlightening that you are bringing us very specific and I would say proactive examples of how we can really use this strength to maybe keep changing, because maybe, as you say, it's in our nature to change. We are powerful transformers, but it could be in a different direction. So before I pass you to the questions, I want to make you a question. Perhaps it's a bit more of a personal insight. Is like how hopeful you are that we can be positive, earth transformers, that we can really reverse the harm, or at least thinking of in positive ways, because sometimes we even have the feeling that when people talk about exploring the space, or that it is easier even to go to think about living in Mars in the future once we finish destroying Earth, it's like how you see, how hopeful you are in the idea that we can drive this in a better direction.
Yes, I think that probably changes, Maria, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, sometimes the news seems so bad that you don't really have a lot of hope, but then other times, things look up and you think, okay, there is really hope. And I think we all probably feel like that to one degree or another. But I do think after Alison and I wrote this paper, one of our reviewers pointed us to the work of a woman called Alina Bennett. And she's got a great TED Talk, actually, where she talks about her own research and how, I guess similar in some ways to ours. She was going around telling a very depressing story about, just how we're destroying the earth. And I think a number of researchers feel that, when we do this, we're not actually helping matters. I mean, we're providing a lot of new data and we're showing some, patterns that are important, but we're also, I think, making people look at the whole thing so negatively and without any hope. And when people have no hope, then nobody bothers to do anything. So I think it's extremely important that we all work to actually look at what we can do, and that's all we can do. That's all we can do is if as many of us as possible try and look at this with some optimism and actually do something about it. That has the potential to be a powerful mechanism for change. So I think we don't really have a choice. I think if we are negative and we just give up, what hope is there for us? We will all just continue living as we do now and carry on, and the planet will heat, and we'll have wars, and we'll have diseases, and just all of these problems will become worse. So the hope is that that people can actually look at this optimistically, and I think that that must be an important part of how we move forward. Because I don't think just telling everyone the planet is on fire and it's all going to hell is actually working.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I fully agree. And I think it is great indeed that you are here and you're bringing us I would say, a practical translation of the past in possibilities. No, it's not only what is damaging our resilience, but all the opposite, how we can build stronger. And I think this is a very interesting project. You are really gathering an amazing team, cross-disciplinary, that is really giving hope and the real place of science, I would say, in bringing solutions. No, that's what really science should be doing. And I think it's important now at this moment that we are going through a period that is very easy to fall in this apocalyptic mood that, okay, we all feel tempted to give up because it seems that there is no way out. And I think science, and again, in this case, thanks to you, is bringing us some light, I would say, at the end of this tunnel. So I really double thank you today that you have come and you have joined us in this very special event with such a positive and scientific message. So yeah. Now we have a question here. Yes?
Is somebody speaking?
Yeah, so there is a question. I don't know if you have access to this chat in the YouTube, but I can read for you. And you say, geological epoch boundaries are defined by worldwide events, which ideally are not diachronous. For example, the Iridium spike at the KT boundary. Which options do we have for the Anthropocene?
Okay, so this is okay. I don't want to sound really negative about this, but this is also a debate that I don't think really gets us anywhere. It's been one of those things that there has been a lot of concentration on is, okay, how far back are we going to trace the Anthropocene? When did it begin? And where do we actually put this particular, spike? And do we call it a geological epoch or not? This is like a big debate. And for me, I don't really feel that it's a highly useful way, at least for archaeologists, to go. I don't think there's any need to trace the start of the Anthropocene back into the past. I think what we need, I think we need to focus on other things. And so when exactly the Anthropocene began, I kind of, I prefer that we probably keep the term rather open, I suggest. I'm not sure. There's currently a move to kind of put a date of like 1945, I think, on it. I'm not sure if I find that highly useful, and I'm a little bit concerned if the group tries to do this and then fails to do it, then that also sends the wrong kind of message that, we're not actually changing the planet that much. So I think we all know we're changing the planet. I think that now we need to focus on the work that we have to do to actually, do something constructive about it. So I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on like where you put the golden spike and how you define the Anthropocene. There are a lot of geologists who are focusing on that. It's a very geological kind of pursuit. They do their own thing. It's actually very different from archaeology, and I just kind of leave that one to them. So I'm sorry, that's probably not the answer that that questioner was looking for.
Another question here is, after Anthropocene, what would be the next step for the Earth?
After the Anthropocene, what will be the next step? Well, I think that has a lot to do with what we do in the Anthropocene. We could have a long and happy and productive Anthropocene where we get global warming under control, where we really use all of our extraordinary intelligence and our ability to pull together you see that our ability to pull together this amazing scientific effort to come up with a vaccine faster than has ever been possible before. Now, multiple vaccines, this kind of mobilization of effort and money and energy into resolving a global crisis. And, if we can put those kind of resources and really focus on the other big problem, or the even bigger problem that's, stands behind COVID-19, and that is, the impacts that we're having on and climate change in particular, we could do so much to create a planet which is going to that is going to stop warming, where we're going to cut, massively reduce the impacts that we're seeing to biodiversity, where we're going to come up with much more sensible ways to practice agriculture and feed all the population of the world. And so I think of course, what comes after the Anthropocene depends. Personally, I'd like to see a long and fruitful and positive Anthropocene. I'd like it to be a really nice, long geological epoch that continues for, millions of years. But let's see how do we handle it? Could be a very short epoch if we're not, if we don't all mobilize and address the challenges that we face before it's too late. We need to address them now. And I think we should really learn from COVID that it is possible to address these challenges that when we set our mind to it, but also that, things that scientists warn about really do have the potential to disrupt our everyday life. And we shouldn't forget that in the kind of rush to get back to normal life. I think we all so badly want to get back to normal life. It's going to be tempting to just jump back into the old way of doing things and to start racing around the world once again on planes. Whereas we all know what we're doing now is so much more sustainable and green, the way that we're having this lecture right now. So I do hope that we don't just jump back into the old way of doing things. I think I digressed there. I don't even remember the question. Have I answered it?
Great insight. I want, they are saying here, thank you, that they like so much your talk. And I don't know if there are more questions. If not, I want to add a final one, that bringing the thing to the field of paleoanthropology. Would you say also that Neanderthals extinction was part of Anthropocene, of Homo sapiens Anthropocene? Could we think that at some point even Neanderthals could have been part, like actors instead of victims of Anthropocene?
Oh gosh, I feel like I should ask that question to you, Maria. You're the expert on that time frame. I mean, I think it's a fascinating idea that, we not only drove all sorts of other non-human species to extinction, but also, our closest relatives. I think it's entirely possible, but I have to admit that I don't feel, knowledgeable enough on that particular topic. And I look to people like you to tell me, to what degree is it possible that we were responsible for these extinctions of our neighbors.
Extinction, right? We put part of them as this fauna.
Yes. No, I think it's very, very possible. But then, you do hear things like Neanderthals were already in decline, before modern humans moved in. And I don't know to what degree they were just kind of hanging on, and, maybe humans were like the last straw, or whether there was more to it than that. I'm not clear, but yes, I think it's possible that we did, I certainly think it's possible that we had something to do with that.
Some effect. Maybe not intentional, we don't know, but that probably had some effect on their lives.
Yes, exactly.
So thank you very much, Nick. I think there are no more questions. Just before we finish, I would like to let me virtually hand you something that I would have loved to hand you in person, and we will be sending to you shortly. This is in commemoration, and for you to have a memory for what for us is important, is this sculpture of made by Javier Sanz. As you know, this is our logo. This is the Handex from Cima de los Huesos site, which is a representation of perhaps one of the first evidences of this very human behavior of ritual or symbolic thought. So, well, we will be sending this to you. I would have loved that now we follow this talk with a Spanish-style warming party and fiestas to celebrate, but I really ask you to, as soon as this is possible, you come to join us, and we really celebrate in our style this event. In the meantime, I must say that it has been wonderful that you have brought a lot of light for us, for our research, for science, and it has a lot of merit because this is a period where it's not that easy to bring light, and I think you are bringing hope, indeed, touching one of the most difficult and sometimes, I don't know, I would say disturbing topics, which is Anthropocenes, but I really keep in my mind with this idea of a better Anthropocene. I think there is hope that we use our transformation, our power in a different direction, and you really brought us today light, science, data, projects that we all hope that are very successful. They look great because we will all benefit, not only scientists, but obviously whole society of your insights and your projects. So thank you so much. We are very honored of having you in this very special occasion for the CENIEH.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'm really, as I said, I'm so honored to be invited to speak to you, and it was fantastic to interact between Spain and Germany in this way. And I thank you for the gift, which it looks amazing, and I can't wait to actually hold it myself. And Mike will be very, very jealous. So thank you. That's really wonderful. And yes, let's end with a message of hope. I think, these are dark times, and I think that we do need to need to look to the future with hope. That is all that we can do in the face of the challenges we face, and everything that we do, however seemingly small, if we all do something, then we can change the world. So let's think in that way, and let's move forward, to creating a good Anthropocene.
Okay, so thank you and good luck and good Anthropocene for all of us. Yeah,
I wish you a good Anthropocene. Thanks so much. Bye then. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.